Over the past number of weeks, Canadian security agencies have been actively pursuing credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
And as of today, and as a consequence, we've expelled a top Indian diplomat from Canada.
On Crux Decode this week, we try to find answers to the question of Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his alleged encouragement of Khalistani Sikh extremism in Canada. It involves a blend of political dynamics, historical factors, and a nuanced understanding of the Sikh diaspora in Canada. Now, to explore this issue comprehensively, one must delve into Trudeau's political compulsions, also examine the role of parties like the New Democratic Party, the NDP, on whose numbers the fate of his coalition rests. One also needs to understand the origins of Khalistani separatism in Canada, particularly the period before and the period after the Kanishka air bombing of 1985, which killed more than 300 Canadian and Indian citizens. Now, critics argue that Justin Trudeau's approach to Khalistani Sikh extremism is influenced by political compulsions, particularly his perceived reliance on support from Sikh communities, particularly those who are sympathetic to Khalistani separatism. Trudeau has faced allegations of turning a blind eye to this extremism within these communities in order to secure their votes. The latest being the decision of the Canadian government to expel a senior Indian diplomat, allegedly for the Indian government's role in the killing of a known Khalistani activist, Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
The allegations that a representative of a foreign government may have been involved in the killing of a Canadian citizen here in Canada, on Canadian soil, is not only troubling, but it is completely unacceptable. If proven true, this would be a grave violation of our sovereignty and of the most basic rule of how countries deal with each other. We've been clear we will not tolerate any form of foreign interference. And as of today, and as a consequence, we've expelled a top Indian diplomat from Canada.
India has retaliated by expelling a senior Canadian diplomat who is based in their mission in New Delhi. However, it is crucial to note that Trudeau's position on this issue has evolved over time, but on the record, he has consistently maintained that his government does not support any form of extremism. Nonetheless, there have been numerous instances from Brampton to Ottawa to Toronto to Vancouver where there have been open provocations by members of radical Sikh outfits who have been, in a sense, challenging India's territorial integrity and sovereignty. Evidence on the ground points to the fact that the Trudeau government has either looked the other way or it has been extremely soft towards these extremist elements. The NDP, for example, which is led by Jagmeet Singh, who is of Sikh descent, he's been accused by some of having affiliations with Sikh separatist groups. While Jagmeet Singh himself may deny any such associations on the record, the presence of NDP members who have known sympathies for Khalistani separatism, that is raising some very serious concerns. Jagmeet Singh has also openly backed Khalistani separatist activists like Nijjar, Paramjit Singh Panjwar and Avtar Singh Khanda. There are also a host of these Khalistani activists who are known and whose role is known for crimes that have occurred in India, who are wanted and are seeking safe haven and shelter in Canada. It is essential to recognize that Jagmeet Singh's entire politics has been based on the pandering to the Sikh community, who number just over 1 million but they are a politically significant constituency both for the Liberals as well as the Conservative parties. Jagmeet Singh's party may have just 24 members of parliament, but it has outsized influence on the Trudeau government. If he withdraws support to the government, then the government will likely fall. The roots of Khalistani separatism in Canada can be traced back to the 1970s, when a significant number of Sikh immigrants arrived in that country from India. Some of them brought with them political ideologies that were centered on the idea of an independent Sikh Khalistan state carved out of modern-day India. Now, over the years, this sentiment has found a foothold within the Sikh community in Canada, even though there are very few takers for it in India and in Punjab, where a majority of the Sikh community resides. As a result of this sentiment in the Indo-Canadian diaspora, it has led to various extremist activities, including fundraising for some of these militant groups in India. A defining moment came in 1985 with the Kanishka air bombing, which occurred on the 23rd of June 1985. It was one of the deadliest acts of terrorism in Canadian history. Air India Flight 182 that was traveling from Toronto to Mumbai was destroyed by a bomb that was planted by Sikh extremists. All 329 people on board, including Canadian and Indian citizens, lost their lives. In fact, at that time, Justin Trudeau's father, Pierre Trudeau, used to be the Prime Minister of Canada, and he too was accused of taking a rather soft line on these Sikh extremists. Several individuals and organizations have been associated with Khalistani extremism in Canada over the years, and these include organizations like the International Sikh Youth Federation, the Babar Khalsa International, and of course Sikhs for Justice, which is now suddenly mushroomed both in the UK as well as in Canada. But it is essential to recognize that a majority of the Sikh Canadians and majority of Sikh Indians are peaceful and law-abiding citizens who do not support any form of extremism. There are parallels, though, in this case, particularly in how Canada and the Canadian government is responding to this, a parallel with what Pakistan has done in the past and how it has used state-sponsored terrorists to attack and to target India. Something that has now come back to bite the Pakistani establishment itself. Right from fomenting the Kashmir insurgency back in the late 80s and early 90s, Pakistani state and non-state actors are alleged to be involved in some of the biggest terror attacks on Indian soil, including the Mumbai terror attacks of 2008, which killed over 160. Providing a safe sanctuary for extremist elements can have international repercussions as well. It can strain diplomatic ties, it can lead to increased scrutiny from the international community, it can even result in sanctions and travel restrictions. Allowing extremist elements to operate on one's soil can also ultimately become a domestic security threat, as Pakistan itself is now finding. The Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan is the single biggest threat to Pakistani society and to the Pakistani establishment. In fact, over the last 20 years since the war on terror began, more than 30,000 Pakistanis have died fighting the Taliban or at the hands of the Taliban. Now, in some cases, hosting extremist elements has led to a blowback where the host state itself becomes a target of terrorist attacks, much like the example of Pakistan. Terrorist groups may turn against their hosts if they perceive them as insufficiently supportive or simply not aligned with their own goals. Both Canada and Pakistan have faced international pressure to take action against these extremist elements. This pressure can come from countries that are directly affected, like in this case India, or from global efforts to try and combat terrorism, one notable global agency being the FATF, which has acted in the past against Pakistan, blacklisting them for not doing enough against these terrorist elements. In all, Justin Trudeau's government may be playing with fire, keeping in mind its own domestic political compulsions. How his coalition needs the support of smaller but more radical Sikh parties like the NDP of Jagmeet Singh. Current polls, in fact, put the Liberal government at a distant second if polls were to be held today. They would be ousted from power. Trudeau may come a cropper. But, as Hillary Clinton, the former US Secretary of State, once famously said in the context of Pakistan, breeding snakes in your backyard is a bad idea because one day they will come back to bite you. Trudeau is likely breeding snakes in his backyard without realizing that this could fracture Canadian society and deepen fault lines amongst Canadian citizens. This, the long-term impact of this policy, should worry him more than his diplomatic fallout with India.